Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show, featuring Coach Lou Holtz and Mark May. Every week, you can predict the winner, the score, and compete against the crowd for prizes. Sign up on the Crowds Line app or by going to thecrowdsline.com.
Welcome to Week 3 of the Crowds Line College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. This week, Week 3, was blowouts, unexpected blowouts, upsets, and even more upsets, but most of all, it was Week 2 of college football, and we can't ask for more than that. We've got Mark May, Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, Coach Lou Holtz, National Championship coach. Gentlemen, tell us what were your big thoughts, and Mark, let's start with you. What were the upsets? What were you most excited about this past week?
Well, living out here in Arizona, obviously close to Arizona State, the new coach Herm Edwards, and what he's been able to do, he's changed the culture at Arizona State in just 2 games. They beat UTSA last week soundly, and then they had Michigan State, one of the highly respected and highly ranked teams from the Big Ten, coming to their backyard, and it was a hard-fought game. But the culture change at Arizona State's been amazing in such a short period of time, where he's gotten not only the players to buy in, the coaching staff to buy in, but all the fans out here in Arizona buying into this program. Everybody's on board now in such a short period of time.
I agree with you. It was a tremendous win by them. But I'll tell you what really impressed me was Texas A&M. Elko, the new defensive coordinator, Mark, did a tremendous job on Clemson. And matter of fact, there were some dubious calls during the course of the game, and I think that A&M could have won the football game. The receiver didn't run the correct route on the 2-point conversion, but let me tell you what impressed me the most about A&M. The way their offensive line competed against a great defensive line from Clemson. They couldn't put a great deal of pressure on the quarterback. And so Jimbo Fisher came in there and really has done a tremendous job in just 2 short games, just like you talked about Arizona State. And poor Arizona. You know, they have 0-2 now, and they're really, really struggling. But there were so many great games. And, you know, how about the great win, Mark, by Colorado State? They're 0-2. They're down by 18 in the second half against Arkansas. Chad Morris, a great offense. They came back to win the football game. There were games like that all the time. Yeah, we look at the major game, but there are so many great games and competitors from smaller schools, like Maine beating Western Kentucky, Eastern Michigan beating Purdue, the list goes on and on.
Hey, Mark, you and I had talked about this before, but I'm real interested in your opinion first. We have upsets, but then we have these almost upsets. Well, one of them happened up the road in Tallahassee, Florida, where Bobby Bowden's alma mater, Stanford, came in and put a little scare into the Seminoles. But there was another almost upset in South Bend, Indiana, when David Letterman's alma mater came in to Notre Dame and did some damage. Mark, what are your thoughts about that?
Not only that, how about the way that they played them? Physical right down to the end. They rushed for more yards than Notre Dame did, Coach. Ball State, a team that was 2-10 last year, 0-8 in the MAC, came in there and thoroughly embarrassed them and almost won this football game. They had a chance to win this game. And how about your quarterback, Brandon Wimbush, in that game? 0 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions in the game, Coach. Is that national championship caliber quarterback play?
I've heard enough from you. I heard enough. This is not Bash Notre Dame show. Notre Dame did win 2-0. They are 2-0 at the present time. They won the game 24-16, and now they're going to go on and continue to win. And while we're at it, how did Pitt do? I didn't get that score. I think it was 51-16 against Penn State. The team that you predicted would win. We'll get to that a little later in the show.
Hey, the Panthers were only good on a fast track. It was a muddy track.
Well, Coach, we'll get to that, but let's go back a little bit to Tallahassee. You know, Stanford comes in there. Delvin Hodges from Stanford throws for 475 yards against the Seminoles. Now, Shorter University of Rome, Georgia, only gave up 330 yards passing to one Devlin Hodges. Now, my concern for Willie Taggart is, I think we all agree, Eric Dungey's from Syracuse is a little bit better, and that's where Florida State's going next week up there to the Carrier Dome. They could be 0-3. What are your thoughts on Florida State, Mark?
I'll tell you what, he's in a deep hole right now. And Willie Taggart's done a terrific job wherever he's been. At South Florida, turn that program around, goes up to Oregon, gets them back on the winning track, and everybody thought he would hit the ground running at Florida State, but not so. They're deep at the quarterback position, but there's a lot of holes on his football team. Running back is a strong position for them, but offensive line is weak. The defense doesn't have the stars that they've had in the past. So right now they're challenged, and going up to the Dome is a tough place to play. Ask Clemson last year when they went up to the Dome and played, and they lost to Syracuse.
Yeah, but Mark, you go back when they played Virginia Tech. Florida State's defensive backs cannot play the ball in the air. They do not play the ball in the air any way whatsoever. And the fact that they did not perform well against Virginia Tech, it could be a very long season. Willie Taggart's done a great job. However, overall, he still has a losing record as a head coach.
Now, gentlemen, we'll get into this in a second when we talk about games we picked. But let's talk about the upset. Now, Coach, according to you, they're 12 years ahead of schedule. The Kentucky Wildcats went into the swamp when no one said they could. And, you know, basketball school not. But you got to give it to the Kentucky Wildcats. They went down there and they stood toe-to-toe with the Gators, and they took it to them. Mark, thoughts?
It was a great win. You know, the first time in the last 32 games that they finally beat Florida. You got to give it to Mark Stoops to have his team ready and to really treat this game like a big game atmosphere. You know, Kentucky starts out well. Last year they started off 5-1, but let's see how they finish. They ended up going 2-5 in their last 7 games. How do they respond after a game like this where everybody said, "Attaboy," patting them on the back, "Great job, you finally got the monkey off our back"? Let's see how they perform the rest of the season, particularly this next game coming up.
I think they'll perform well, Mark. Let's remember this. 3 of the last 4 years, they've lost the game by less than a touchdown. And last year, they could have beat them except for a freak thing that happened. But not only did they win, Mark, they played them physical. And that's the one thing you have to do in the Southeast Conference. You must be the most physical football team on the field if you hope to have a chance to win. And Florida was not that. Kentucky was very physical.
Well, as we said last week, the Wildcats can count to 11, and when there's a blue jersey closer to the sidelines, put somebody in front of them, and you never know what's going to happen. So great things there. Now, gentlemen, as we talk about this coming up week, pretty excited. But most important, this past week, our 2 experts, you picked 4 games in our college football show contest, and then you picked 5 games in our Rapid 5 contest. Our college football show contest, we had Clemson, Texas A&M. Coach, you won that with the spread. USC, Stanford. Mark, straight up, you hit that one. Georgia at South Carolina. We're going to go into that game. And Penn State at Pitt. Coach, you won that. So with that, Coach, Mark, and Mark, we'll start with you. Let's talk about 104,000, 12th man, standing strong in College Station. Just close enough, but it was kind of outside on a, it was close. What do you think, Mark? Tell us about that game.
I'll tell you what, it was a terrific game to watch. I think all eyes of college football were watching that game, and the reason why is you had 2 juggernauts going into that game. No one thought Texas A&M could hang with Clemson, and when Clemson took the lead, particularly when they came in, when Trevor Lawrence came in and his first pass in the game, it's a 64-yard touchdown reception. You really thought Clemson was going to start putting the points on the scoreboard. But Texas A&M fought back defensively, which is really impressive in this game. And not only that, I love the halftime adjustments by Jimbo Fisher and his staff. The first half, his quarterback Kellen Mond only threw for 100 yards. Second half threw for over 330 yards in this football game and 3 touchdowns. I thought that was the key of the game. One thing that I took out of this game, Coach, Clemson's defensive secondary. They've got to get better. Brett Venables depends on that front 4 getting the quarterback. They had 4 sacks in the game, 10 tackles for loss for the guys up front. But the defensive secondary of Clemson has to play better if they expect to get to a national championship this year.
Yeah, Mark, it all goes back to the offensive line. Clemson's had great pass defense because they got great pressure with their front 4. Their front 4 is supposed to be the best that there has ever been, maybe as good as anybody in the NFL. They could not get the pressure with a 4-man rush. And if you can't get pressure with 4-man rush, the same thing in Alabama faced a couple years ago. You can't play good coverage if you don't get pressure on the passer, and that was the biggest difference in that game.
Well, I think we'd all agree Trevor Lawrence and the Fabio hair looked good initially, but Kelly Bryant played like a senior, and when they needed him, he took charge, and he's a big reason they won that game. Next up for Clemson is Georgia Southern. We all know it's tough, but next up for Texas A&M. Coach, you mentioned Louisiana Monroe before. They know how to upset. Maybe they got upset on their minds. So that leaves that for our next game. USC at Stanford. Bread and butter. Hey, hand the ball to Bryce Love. Do what you're going to do, but Stanford won 17-13. Mark, you had Stanford winning straight up. Coach, you picked USC, so Mark, that's your win. Talk to me about USC and Stanford.
If you look at Stanford, it's just bread and butter. When you go up to the farm, it's a difficult place to play. And you look what David Shaw's been able to do over the course of time since he's been at Stanford. He is a proven winner. Not only that, they do it by defense, and they do it by pounding the football offensively. Their defense did a terrific job on JT Daniels, knocked him out of the game, but he did come back and play, but was under a lot of pressure, a lot of duress in this game. And Bryce Love finally turned it around. After last week's embarrassment of 29 rushing yards, he had 136 on the ground. The offensive line did a terrific job. I think when you look at Stanford right now, long as they can run the football with Bryce Love and play tough defense, they're going to be in it in the Pac-12 North and the Pac-12 for a championship. I like the way that they played against USC. USC still has a long way to go, Coach, with a young football team.
They definitely have a long ways to go, but I think also I'm impressed with Costello, the quarterback for Stanford. He's only a sophomore. He makes good choice, has a strong arm. But the difference between this Stanford football team and the ones the last couple of years, Mark, I think has been how well they play defense. I was very impressed with the way they could cover receivers. Not only that, they, instead of being a tight end passing attack, they're now throwing it to the wide receivers. They're a very, very dangerous football team. I was very impressed by Stanford.
Well, and next week, USC goes to Texas, down in Austin city limits. Good thing JT Daniels is underage, so he can't get in that. But Stanford goes out to UC Davis, coached by Dan Hawkins. We all know him. Division I football. Dan Hawkins is the head coach of the undefeated UC Davis, and that's where Stanford's going. So we'll see how that works out. Here's a big one. Georgia at South Carolina. Y'all picked, Coach, you had 28-10 plus 18. Mark, you had 31-20 plus 11. This one wasn't even close. 41-17 plus 24 in a blowout. Darius Rucker, South Carolina's #1 fan. I think we're all glad he's a country singer now because he's got a whole bunch of new material about the Bulldogs in my backyard, ate my chickens, what have you. That was ugly. Mark, talk to us about what went on down in Columbia.
Kirby Smart, the head coach of Georgia, had his team extremely well prepared in this football game. You know they're going to come with an outstanding defense no matter who's on the defensive side of the ball. He's a defensive genius. Not only that, what they were able to do in the run game, they rushed for over 270 yards in this game. Elijah Hollifield led the running backs with 3 deep. These guys can run the football, but what was more impressive to me, Coach, is how they stuffed the offensive running game of the Gamecocks, held them to 54 yards in this game. And you know as well as I do, if you can run the ball and you can stop the run and don't turn it over, you've got a great chance to win football games. And you got a quarterback in Jake Fromm for Georgia that doesn't make a lot of mistakes and gets the job done.
No, he had a tremendous game. I think it was 15 out of 18 and just provided great leadership. But Georgia has a very, very athletic football team, and they're very, very physical, and they're playing very confident. I thought Georgia would win the football game. As a matter of fact, that's why I picked them to be one of my Final Four rather than picking Washington and Michigan State as my Final Four, Mark.
It's early.
In any event, they're very, very impressive. I think that I made a good pick with them in the Final Four.
Well, from Jake Fromm being steady to the young, real deal Holyfield running the football. More on that later. But next up for Georgia, Middle Tennessee State, who's no slouch. And South Carolina has Doc Holliday and the Thundering Herd of Marshall. So we are Marshall coming to South Carolina next week. All right, gentlemen, and our last game that we picked in the College Football Show contest was Penn State going into Pitt, the home of Mark May, and we're looking for number 73 on the field. It's not there because it's retired, because that was Mark May's number. Mark, you picked Penn State or Pitt 28-24. Coach, you picked Penn State 42-14. Coach, I think you're a little closer. Mark, defend yourself, please.
They should have called this one on cuts. I'll tell you what, it was ugly and ugly early. The weather was a factor. Special teams were a factor. Muff punts. They gave up a punt return for a touchdown. Couldn't handle the snaps. Couldn't handle the snaps on extra points. Couldn't stop anybody defensively. It was just a bad performance by the Pitt Panthers. And I sat there and watched that game, and I'm like, what is wrong with this football team? You can't just give up. And that was embarrassing to me because they really gave up in that game, and it was against Penn State and arch rival. This is a game that you fight to the end and you play every down against them hard because they're going to use this in recruiting against the Panthers for the next year.
I think that my only comment, Mark, would be what the coach said a year ago. Rivalry? This is no rivalry. And it's absolutely right. A rivalry is when both teams have a chance to win. Pitt had no chance, Mark.
I can't even do a rope-a-dope on this one. I've got no defense.
You look good in the leprechaun outfit, Mark.
Well, Mark, I'll try to save you as best I can because it was pretty tough because Penn State only passed for 55 yards, but they had 116, or Pitt passed for 55, but have 116 yards in penalties. So, who's they have next? Well, coming up, Pitt gets to prepare for that Paul Johnson triple option at Georgia Tech. I'm sure that's a fun week of practice. But next up for Penn State is that cradle of coaches university. The Golden Flashes of Kent State are coming in to Happy Valley. So we'll see how that goes. And that's where we are for the College Football Show contest. And what did we end up there? We ended up with some big wins, some upsets, not really big upsets, but as that takes us to our Rapid Five. And when you say upsets, Rapid Five started out with upsets. We were having Michigan State, Arizona State, Kentucky at Florida, Arizona at Houston, Mississippi State at Kansas State, and Air Force going to FAU. So what I want to do is I want to go through the first one. Michigan State, Arizona State. Michigan State goes in there, out there to Tempe, in the desert. The game's late at night. What does Arizona State do? Herm Edwards, 16-13. Mark, you picked Michigan State, 37-34. Coach, you picked Michigan State. So that one's a press, gentlemen. We're going to move on from that. But I want to talk about that game. Upset. Arizona State beats Michigan State at home. Talk to us, Mark.
I'll tell you what, one of the best coaching hires that Herm Edwards made is Danny Gonzalez, a defensive coordinator. If you look at this team last year, they were like 77th in run defense. They're the #1 run defense in the nation right now. They stop the run. They put pressure on the quarterback. They make you throw the ball against this defense. And I'll tell you what, Manny Wilkins at quarterback, he's done a terrific job directing this offense through for 380 yards in this football game. If they have to run it, they run it. They cut down their penalties from the first week of the season. This is a well-coached football team. And not only that, their wide receivers could be some of the best in the Pac-12 at this point. I see this team doing great things, but we'll see how they handle this victory when they go to San Diego State, because San Diego State's a team that beat them last year. So for Herm, he's got to make sure to keep this team hungry and keep this team healthy and keep this team humble.
Well, #1 at wide receiver is the best in the country, and he was a big difference in that football game. But I tell you what changed the game to me was the speed of Arizona State compared with the speed and athleticism of Michigan State. Michigan State is very, very good. However, Arizona State was just so athletic and so quick, and whether it be on defense or offense, running back, they just seem to be faster than Michigan State.
Well, I would agree that it kind of looked like Arizona State, that the grown man, Herm Edwards, got some people, some 18 to 22-year-olds to act like tough grown men, and that's what they did. But you look what's up next. Arizona State is San Diego State, and, you know, they did a lot better against Stanford than USC did. So I hope they're not, I hope those boys are prepared. And for good reason, Michigan State has a bye. 63 yards rushing against Arizona State's not going to fly in the Big Ten, as you know. Our next game is a huge game. The Kentucky Wildcats went to Florida, and I'm going to tell you, at the end of the night, as they say in Lexington, they were partying like it's 1987, trying to do their best imitation of Morgantown. Instead of burning couches, they were a little safer. They decided to turn over cars. The place went crazy because the Kentucky Wildcats went to Gainesville and took care of business. Both you gentlemen picked Florida, so that game is a precedent. We're going to push that one off as well. So, Mark, talk about Benny Snell, Mark Stoops, and those UK Wildcats in Gainesville.
And first of all, I want to talk to the Kentucky fans. Act like you've been there. Oh, that's right. This is the first time in 32 games that you finally beat Florida. You haven't been there. Second thing is, Kenny Snell Jr. did a terrific job running the football, 175 yards in this game. They had another running back rush over 100. They were physical up front. They got the job done. But what impressed me the most is they finished out the game in the second half, Coach. Mark Stoops had this team ready at halftime adjustments. I talk about that all the time. They went out and they punished Florida in the second half physically and just beat them into the ground, and they outscored them 20-6 in the second half. And if you want to destroy an opponent, that's what you do. You crush them with the run, you run the football effectively, and you continue to move the chains and eat the clock and put points on the board. That's what they did in the second half. That's why they had success against the Gators.
I was very impressed with Snell and the job he did. As I said, Kentucky looked like an SEC team, Mark. But, you know, when every time somebody wins obviously somebody loses. How about Dan Mullen at Florida? You know, after the opening game, everybody in this state of Florida talked about how great they're going to be and maybe they're going to compete with Georgia and everything else and how great Frank is. But, Mark, this wasn't the same great defense that we're used to seeing in Florida, but basically the same style offense. So maybe it's not going to be as quick a turnaround for Florida as Dan Mullen once thought, but he's still a great football coach. He'll get it done. But, boy, what a great win for Kentucky.
Well, gentlemen, on Kentucky, our Kentucky legend, Rex Chapman, he was with us last week. Well, he's with us again, and he's got a little message for you, a little video to show you, gentlemen, and just kind of ask you. He has a question for you about what do you think about those Wildcats? Show him that video in studio, gentlemen.
Coach, Mark, it's Rex Chapman again. This week, you guys called me a comedian last week for picking my Wildcats over the Gators. Did this basketball guy just get one over on the football guys? I got lucky, but I'm dying to know, can my Wildcats make some noise in the SEC this year? I'm dying to get your take on this. Please.
Oh, they're going to make a lot of noise, Rex. That was a great win, but let's remember this. They're in the same division as Georgia, and then they're going to have to play Alabama if they do get by Georgia. So enjoyed the win. I think it was great. You'll have several more coming on, but you aren't going to win the Eastern Division, and you aren't going to win the SEC championship.
Hey, Rex, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. You got lucky. Enjoy it. Go out and turn over cars for this week. But guess what? You're not going to win the SEC East. You'll be lucky to finish third. You still have Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Missouri, and not only that, Georgia you've got to play. So I don't think there's a chance you'll be seeing yourself in the SEC championship game in Atlanta anytime soon.
Well, this show's producer.
However,
go, Coach.
I just want to say congratulations, Rex. That was a great call, and obviously that was done with your mind as well as your heart.
Well, this show's producer, Scott Hall, is a former walk-on University of Kentucky offensive lineman. So whenever we can root for the Cats, we're going to do so. Now, that leads us to our next game. Arizona at Houston. Coach, you yourself, your exact words were, Khalil Tate's a runner. Someone's got to let Khalil Tate run. Well, he did, and then he hurt himself, so then he threw. But the big issue is Khalil Tate can't play defense because there were 5 touchdowns scored by Houston before halftime. This was a blowout. 45-18 Houston over Arizona. Mark, you picked Houston straight up, 27-21. Coach, you picked Arizona. So, gentlemen, it's great for one, not so great for the other. What do you think, Mark?
De'Ara King, the quarterback for Houston, had an outstanding job. He threw for 4 touchdowns, rushed for another touchdown. But what was more impressive to me was the way that Houston got out of the blocks of this game. They were up 31-0 at halftime, and Arizona had no response. Kevin Sumlin used to coach at Houston. You would think he would have his team better prepared for this game. Yeah, you can talk about Khalil Tate's injury to his ankle, but he still went back in and played the football game. If he can go in and play the football game, he's healthy enough to play. You still have to try to run your quarterback when you can, but they were down so much and in the hole. They had to throw the football. That's not his forte. When he passes for over 20 attempts per game, they don't win. They're offers.
I think it's obvious to me, even a blind man could see that it's going to be a long year for Arizona. I thought they would be much, much better. Matter of fact, as I said, they were picked to finish third, right behind Southern Cal and Utah. But they just have not played well in either of their first 2 football games. Looks like it'll be a long year for them, and particularly with how good Arizona State looked. That's a problem when you're in state. You may not be playing very good, but when the other team in the state's playing great, that really upsets your alums then. You know, if they're doing bad and you're doing bad, that's okay. But this is a bad situation for Kevin Sumlin. However, he's a good coach. I'm sure he'll right the ship, not this year.
Well, I think Kevin Sumlin will learn his lesson and maybe think about defense a little bit more than offense when he can. Next up, Arizona goes to equally 0-2 Southern Utah. And Houston has Texas Tech in Dallas. And don't forget, Texas Tech put 77 on Lamar. So, hey, they can play some offense. Mississippi State at Kansas State. Well, Mark, you said Mississippi State 42-16 plus 26. Coach, Mississippi State 31-21 plus 10. You know, it was 31-10. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe Moorhead said, you know what, I'm going to look more like Fordham and I'm going to look like Penn State. We're just going to play football and just go right down there at Bill Snyder's Kansas State. And Mark, what do you think about this game? Nick Fitzgerald, first game back. What do you think about Mississippi State and Kansas State?
I'll tell you what, it may be early in the season, but Joe Moorhead's done a terrific job at Mississippi State thus far. He had to go to the backup quarterback last week and still won that game impressively. And then this week, he gets his quarterback, Nick Fitzgerald, back. He played well in this game. But Kylan Hill, the running back, had a terrific game, over 200 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, and another one receiving. I thought what they did was impressive. They went into Little Apple in Manhattan, coach, in Kansas, and destroyed Kansas State in their own backyard, which is surprising because when you look at Bill Snyder's team, they usually play extremely well at home, solid on defense, they never make mistakes, they're well coached and a smart football team. In this game, they just couldn't keep up with Mississippi State's running attack, and not only their running attack, on special teams, I thought Mississippi State had a leg up on Kansas State in this game.
I think Mississippi State is a very, very outstanding football team, and I think they'll play Texas A&M very, very well. I'm not sure about Alabama, but I'm impressed with the attitude of Mississippi State. You know, Fitzpatrick, the Heisman candidate, the great quarterback, had to sit out the first game for suspension, but when he came in, he said to him, think about winning the Heisman to Fitzpatrick. That mentality that, hey, you can really be good. And I can tell you as a coach, when you put a faith and a confidence in people, you get them to dream big and you get them to think about how great they can be, who knows what's going to happen. This is a very, very good Mississippi State football team.
Well, Mississippi State's going to, next up, Louisiana, Lafayette, Kansas State, University of Texas, San Diego, and it's or San Antonio. Tough for Kansas State. They played 2 quarterbacks, but for Mississippi State, that was just an extra person to sack because they had 4 sacks on that game. Hey, Air Force at FAU. Lane Kiffin, hey, redemption. I'm back home, back in Boca. Here come the Falcons. Coach, you picked the Falcons. Mark, you picked the Falcons. FAU wins 33-27. They stopped the run, but FAU found a way to win. Mark.
They found that way to win through the air. Chris Robinson, the young quarterback, 471 yards through the air. Air Force's defense had no reaction to that. They couldn't slow it down or stop the passing game, but they did fight hard in this football game. It was a very close game right down to the bitter end. And for Lane Kiffin, coach, this is his first non-conference FBS win at the school. And you look at Florida Atlantic, this is a school that has a pretty good history long ago, but they struggled the last few years. Lane Kiffin's come in and done a solid job turning this program around. And I'll tell you what, it's a good response after licking the ruins after getting destroyed at Oklahoma last week.
Well, that's the way I thought they would perform at Oklahoma, Mark. I thought they'd play much better on defense. You know, as we mentioned, they had 10 starters coming back on defense. They were a very good defensive team last year, but they did lose Chris, who's happened to be the brother of Lane Kiffin. Chris Kiffin left there. So defensively, they're not playing that great. But I thought they'd play very, very well against Oklahoma, have that explosiveness. They have talent, have a lot of transfers on their team. They're still the favorite to win the USA Conference.
Well, gentlemen, there we have it. We had our college football contest. We had our Rapid 5 contest. And we had quite a few new members join the Crowds Line, sign up for the Crowds Line, the free contest. They competed, and now we got some winners. So before we get to those winners, though, let's talk about the ultimate winners at the end of the season and who Coach and Mark think those are going to be. Earlier on week 1, we came up with our top 4 college football championship game and our national champion. Mark, at the time, you picked Alabama, Clemson, Michigan State, Washington. Since that time, Washington lost in week 1. Michigan State lost on Saturday. Now, what's your thoughts now? Who do you want to add in, or do you want to stay put? For it's a long season, as you say.
So stop throwing dirt on my picks, Kevin. This is the deal. All I have to do is pick the winner of the national championship, and I've got Alabama still there. Clemson still won. They're both undefeated. Washington still has a chance. If they run the table and they play well throughout the season, they'll still be Pac-12 champions. If they win out, they've got a chance to be there. So I'm sticking with the Huskies. And Michigan State, I don't know. This Big Ten thing, Coach, I think they're going to cannibalize each other. I'm going to slide one out because it's a fluid situation. It's early in the season. I'm putting Oklahoma, the Sooners, in because of Kyler Murray and his quarterback play has been outstanding thus far this season.
Well, that's a good move, putting Oklahoma in place of Michigan State. I think Oklahoma is really for real. I'm not sure how good they'll play on defense, but I got to tell you, Mark, you must use a Ouija board in order to get your pick, because I can't believe how you come up with it.
Well, Coach, you had Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. You want any more cards, or are you just going to stay where you are?
Oklahoma's in the bullpen, but right now, those four, I will stay with those four. I think Wisconsin, Ohio State winner. I'm looking at Georgia, Alabama winner in the conference championship. That's how I came up with those two. It could be Alabama, it could be Georgia, Ohio State, or Wisconsin, but I feel confident. I still think Notre Dame is a very, very good football team. The difference with Notre Dame, I'll talk a little bit about it later, is correctable.
Well, we have those. We're going to keep checking them, and we'll see at the end. Maybe we'll come up with a new pool for Heisman Trophy candidates as they go, because Kyler Murray is looking pretty good, knowing he's got 1 year left. Well, that leads us to our Week 2 winners. And, Coach, I'm going to ask you to read the names of our College Football Show contest winners. Should be 3 of them in front of you, and let us know who they are.
Well, the 3 winners this year are Brian Kalin, I hope I pronounced that right, $250 Amazon gift card. Number 2 is Jack Skibby. Once again, I hope I pronounced that right, $100 Amazon gift card. And number 3, Cameron McCleary. Now, I can pronounce the Irish name, $100 Amazon gift card.
Well, Mark, Rapid 5, Week 2, we have 3 winners. Tell us who they are.
Well, the first one is Dan McLaughlin. He wins $250 in an Amazon gift card. Number 2 is Chip Jones, a $100 Amazon gift card. And number 3, Jack Stark wins a $100 Amazon gift card. Those are my 3 this week.
Well, gentlemen, we have Week 3 of college football in our College Football Show contest. We're going to pick 4 games in this contest this week, and I think every one of them is a huge game. And we're going to start Alabama at Ole Miss, LSU at Auburn, Ohio State versus TCU in Dallas in Jerry Jones AT&T Stadium. And then we have the Vanderbilt Commodores that are going to South Bend, and they're going to face Notre Dame. A lot of big games. So what I want to start with, let's think about Alabama, Ole Miss. This is the 63rd meeting between these two teams. You might be surprised. Alabama leads this series 49-11, and there were 2 ties. First meeting was in 1884. We know about the quarterback situation. We see how that's going on. Hey, is Ole Miss much improved or just not playing anybody? And we know how Alabama is. So, Mark, lead us off Alabama at Ole Miss.
Tua Tagovailoa and Jason Hurts, they lead Alabama at the quarterback position, and with those two as a 1-2 punch, they're tough to beat. They put a lot of pressure on any football team that they play. If you look at Ole Miss, without Hugh Freeze, I don't think Ole Miss has a chance. When he was there, they were very confident against Alabama. They defeated Alabama. This Ole Miss team's got great wide receivers and perimeter players and perimeter speed, Coach. They've done a terrific job. They beat Texas Tech earlier this season, an impressive victory, but I like Alabama the way that they play, not only on offense, but Alabama's still a top 10 defense, again, each and every year, no matter who they replace defensively, they find a way to play tough defense under Nick Saban. And their defensive secondary, they're young, they're growing, but against that Ole Miss wide receiver core, it's going to be tough for them. They'll get challenged in this football game, but they also got challenged by Louisville wide receivers. I don't think this game's going to be close. It'll be close early, but Alabama will pull away late. I got Alabama winning this game 40-17.
Well, you're pretty close on that, Mark. Ole Miss is not an easy place to play. It's a beautiful environment, and I really like the quarterback at Ole Miss. Matter of fact, Shea Patterson transferred to Michigan because Tamua, I think it is, the quarterback, came on so strongly. However, Alabama only has 2 starters back on defense, but you're right, they don't miss a big beat. But I think Tua is the #1 quarterback in the country. He'd be my favorite to win the Heisman, and I don't ever say that early in the year. But I look for Alabama to win the football game 49-17.
Well, no surprise there, but hopefully nobody's overlooking anybody. Obviously, we hope Ole Miss isn't thinking ahead to, once again, the coaching Cradle U of Kent State's coming in after that, and then Alabama has Texas A&M the following week. So that one should be exciting, but not as exciting as number 12 LSU at number 7 Auburn. Second game for each team ranked against a ranked opponent. Very few games like that right now. 53rd meeting between these two. LSU leads 29-22, and there's 1 tie. A lot of meat up front with these two. Mark, what do you think on this game?
I like Auburn's defense in this game. Derek Brown, Dontavius Russell, the guys up front. I think that their defensive front four outstanding. I think that's where the game's going to be won or lost for LSU. LSU's led by their offensive line in the rushing attack. They've got the OSU quarterback in there that's transferred. Joe Barrow's done a terrific job out of Ohio State thus far this season. He's a game controller, a game manager. I don't think he's going to be able to manage this game. If they want to win this game, they're going to have to go vertical with the football. Not only that, Jarrett Stidham is an NFL-type quarterback. He's made progression second year in Gus Malzahn's offense. I think Jarrett Stidham is going to do a terrific job in this game. In the fourth quarter, they will take over and win this football game. It'll be close, Coach, because it'll be one of those juggernaut games where it's slugging it out in the trenches. But I got Auburn winning 27-22.
I could go either way on this football game, but I'm going to go with Auburn because the game is at Auburn. I'm a little disappointed in LSU's offense the last couple of weeks. You know, I know Emsinger's the new offensive coordinator. Barron's a good coach. They're running the football. Their defense is absolutely outstanding, and they play so great on goal line defense. That's the thing that people underestimate is how well you're playing on the goal line on both offense and defense. When I look at it, I'm going to pick Auburn to win the football game, but I could very easily go with LSU 17-14 as quickly as I'm going to go with Auburn 17-14.
Well, each team after that, LSU's got Louisiana Tech's coming in, and Auburn's thinking about Arkansas after that. But right now, those two head-to-head, that's the only thing on their mind. Our third game has been on everybody's calendar for quite a long time for different reasons. First test of the year, but Ohio State at TCU, and that's number 4 Ohio State against number 15 TCU. The game to be played in Jerry Jones AT&T Stadium in Dallas Saturday night. Big game. A lot of people are going to be there, and this is the 7th meeting between these two. Once, call them powerhouses, but it's the 7th meeting since 1937. Ohio State's got a 4-1-1 advantage. But it's the first time this game between Ohio State and TCU has ever been played in the state of Texas. And the reason I bring that up is because, as you know, TCU is legendary football. You've got Davey O'Brien, you've got Slinging Sammy Ball, you've got LaDainian Tomlinson. But just like Urban Meyer, none of them are going to be available on Saturday. So we'll see how this game's going to go. And Mark, what are your thoughts on Ohio State facing their first pretty much 85 scholarship limit team in TCU? What do you think?
The first time they're going to play a team with a pulse. Gary Patterson does a terrific job with his football team each and every year, particularly on defense. They'll find a way to slow down Ohio State. But in the end, I think with Mike Weber running the ball, Dwayne Haskins throwing the ball, he's got 9 touchdown passes, just 1 interception this year. I think that the way they've just pummeled opponents this year, they're going to go down, beating their chest, thinking they're going to roll over TCU. TCU's going to give them a fight in this game. They've got a dual-threat quarterback that can run the football and throw the football. But I think in the end, Ohio State, with their athleticism, with their depth, particularly at running back and the wide receiver, and defensively with Bosa, I think Ohio State gets the job done in a tough-fought game, 38-27, Coach, on the road.
Yeah. Fight the team across the field, show them Ohio State, set the earth. Ohio State just has too much talent. I think you look at Dobbins, you look at Weber, the running backs you mentioned, Haskins. They're 74% on third down conversion mark. Ohio State defense hasn't played as well as I think they will. Nick Bosa's having an exceptional 5 years. He's leading Ohio State in tackles as well as sacks. But do not underestimate TCU and Gary Patterson. He went there, TCU was in the whole market. What he really did, he projected a lot of people as athletes. He'd recruit a 6'2", 200-pound safety man who ran 4.7, not good enough to be a great safety. He'd bring him in, put him in the weight room, make him a rush end, things along that line. Now he's gotten the ability, and for the first time, Mark, he has 3 4-star quarterbacks on the roster. He has 4 4-star running backs on the roster. He's never had this type of talent before. I think they're very, very good. I think it's going to be very close. But the only reason I think Ohio State's going to win 38-24 is they're one of the best teams in the country. I do believe TCU is the only one that can compete with Oklahoma in the Big 12.
Well, you've got Greg Schiano, Kevin Wilson, Ryan Day, all against Gary Patterson with a whole bunch of athletes. So it's probably going to have to go that way. But it is going to be exciting. And it's going to be almost exciting as our last game of this college football show contest. and that is Saturday. Vanderbilt is going to Notre Dame. And we talk about yards per carry against Ball State. We talk about those things. But the other score that maybe you overlooked in this game is 1508 to 1447. And that's the average SAT score for Vanderbilt versus the average SAT score for Notre Dame. So right off the top, you got a bunch of smart kids that are playing football against each other. And great defense at Vanderbilt for a change. We'll see how that works against Notre Dame. Mark, talk to us.
Tell you what, Coach, Vanderbilt is no Ball State. They're better than Ball State. Matter of fact, they're undefeated this season. Derek Mason's done a terrific job. Kyle Shriver, their quarterback. Remember that name, Coach? Kyle's going to throw for 4 touchdowns against your Notre Dame defense. No, I take it back. Let's just make it 3 touchdowns against the defense. I don't want to overload you on this because this is a quarterback that's thrown for 4 touchdowns this season, Coach, without an interception. That guy down in South Bend, he threw for 3 interceptions against Ball State. A 2-10 team from last year. Ball State rushed for 169 yards against your defense. I got Vanderbilt in the upset, outright, straight down, upset, in the dome. Guess what? The Golden Dovers are going to walk out of there with tears dropping down their eyes because Vanderbilt's going to pull it out in the fourth quarter. 23-21, Coach. Vandy upsets Notre Dame.
Mark is a former football coach, including one at the University of Notre Dame. You look at the schedule, you say, there's certain games we've got to peak and we've got to be ready for. There's certain games we can slide by. For example, we better be ready for Michigan. And they were ready. They played great. In Ball State, they were 0-8 in the conference last year. We don't have to be ready. Later, we got Pitt. We don't have to worry about that. We can have a downtime there. But against Vanderbilt coming at home, this is a better Vanderbilt team than they've had in recent years. But with same token, you look at Notre Dame, and the problem Notre Dame, last year, they were like 7th in the country in rushing. This year, they're like 100th in rushing. They have not had the ability to run the football. They lost 2 great offensive linemen, but the one thing I know about Notre Dame, you always have good offensive linemen there. And I think Notre Dame will bounce back. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Notre Dame is upset because we didn't play well last week, and we beat Vanderbilt 31-10.
Gentlemen, this is a third meeting. Notre Dame's 2-0. Closest one, 1996. It was a 14-7 score. Notre Dame did win. But even, be as objective as possible of a Catholic kid from Paul Horning's hometown, Vanderbilt looks pretty good on defense. So we'll see how that goes. Gentlemen, that wraps up our college football show contest. And what's going to go into now is our rapid 5. Maybe not as much breakdown, but still these are 5 big games that are going to affect the college landscape as it's coming up this week. And the first one is kind of a new twist. We don't hear about them much. And that is Charlie Strong and his USF Bulls are going to Champaign, Illinois to see Lovie Smith. And this is probably the first time in a long time that both those teams have been 2-0. Third year in the saddle for both coaches, making some improvement. Last year they played, it was a bit tough because it's probably the most penalized game in the history of college football, if y'all remember that early game last season. So right now they're both 2-0. You've got Charlie Strong coming off a USF big win against Georgia Tech last week. And Illinois is making progress. So, Mark, what do you think right now with USF at Illinois this week?
Well, I like USF in this football game because of their quarterback play out of Blake Barnett. He's been around, he's transferred, as we all know. And not only that, they've got maturity on that side of the ball. When Willie Taggart left, he left the cupboard full for Charlie Strong at USF. And not only that, when you look at Illinois and look at the job that Lovie Smith has done, he's built from the bottom up. And he had to because he had no talent there. So he had to play freshmen, he had to play sophomore, he had to play young players right away. They're undefeated at this time, but they really haven't been challenged. But USF, coming off that big victory last week against Georgia Tech, I like South Florida in this game, 45-27.
I beg your pardon, they have been challenged. They played Kent State in the opening game, and Kent State led the first 3 quarters before Illinois made a comeback.
Like I said, they haven't been challenged.
No, I tell you, I'm going to wait till we play Penn. I look for USF to win as well. You know, Charlie Strong, coach for me at Notre Dame, South Carolina, wonderful young man. His defense coordinator was a graduate assistant for me, Brian St. Marie. Did not play well against Georgia Tech, but they are a good defense football team. I definitely believe that USF wins the football game I don't remember exactly. I think if I was going to pick the score, I'd have to pick it to be about 38-14.
38-14 for Charlie Strong. And make sure, I remember when Charlie Strong got hired at one of his previous head coaching jobs, the first thing he said was, yeah, I just got off the phone with Coach Lou Holtz, and he said, I'll come up to be the get-back coach. So hopefully we don't need that right now. Our next game.
That's what Mark always wanted to be, the get-back coach. He always said, go back into coach and let me be the get-back coach.
That's me.
That's you.
Well, I will tell you, if you look at this next game is, call it Air America, call it whatever you want, but you've got number 17, Boise State, at number 24, Oklahoma State, in Stillwater, T-Boone Pickens, mullets going on, the whole thing, and this is the first ever meeting between these two teams right now. They are Oklahoma State, number 1 in passing yards per game, though only one of those games was against a team with 85 scholarship players. But as we know, sometimes defense is optional in the Big 12. I'm not so sure how much in the Mountain West. It's a big game right now. So, Mark, Boise State, Oklahoma State, talk to us.
Well, you look at Oklahoma State under Mike Gumby. They've always had a prolific offense, but questionable defense, and I think that's going to be their Achilles heel in this game. Now, Boise State, this is a game that they've circled on their schedule because it's the biggest name opponent that they're going to play the entire season, and they always get up for a big game. You've got Rippin at quarterback that's done a terrific job throwing the football. He's passed for over 10,000 yards in his career. That's right, Brett Rippin, Mark Rippin's nephew, the guy that I played a Super Bowl with. Not only that, the way that they run the ball offensively and play defense. Boise State's a complete team. They've already proven themselves on the road this year. They went down to Troy, a team that plays tough each and every year, and that's right, that Troy team that beat LSU at LSU last year, they defeated them handily at their place. Now, going down the road again against Oklahoma State, it's going to be a tougher chore. It's going to be a very close game, Coach, but I got Boise State winning this game, 37-34 in a shootout.
Mark, you should have been a lawyer. I think you do a great job in trying to present all the reasons why the criminals shouldn't be allowed to go free. I mean, Oklahoma State, they do not get the respect, Mark, they truly deserve. Let's remember this. 3 straight years, they've won at least 10 football games. Last year, they lost 2 games regular season. During those 2 games they lost, Mark, they averaged 45 points a game. They scored 50 and won and lost. They scored 40 and lost. So he goes out and he hires a new defense coordinator. I think his name's Holtz. He's changed the defense. He's gone to a 4-2-5, which fits in more with Oklahoma State's personnel. They're blitzing a lot more. So I think it's a very, very solid football team. Offensively, make no mistake about it, they will be very productive. So I look for Oklahoma State to win the football game 38-35 once again because it is at home.
Well, gentlemen, I think the over-under this is going to be about 200. I'm going to take the over, and Taylor Cornelius can sling the ball. But, Coach, you just brought up a novel concept. Somebody is thinking about bringing defense to the Big 12, so that should be exciting. Game number 3 in our Rapid 5 is a pretty interesting cultural dynamic here. You've got Boston College at Wake Forest. 25th meeting of these two teams. The Jesuit school versus the Southern Baptist school. And they're going to come together because Boston College leads this series 13-10 to 2 ties. But here's the most interesting fact. In the last 4 meetings, the home team has lost the last 4 straight. The home team's lost the last 4 straight. So, Coach, Mark, talk to us about Boston College at Wake Forest.
Well, it's got to be 5 straight losses for the home team, and this is the reason why. If you look what Joe Adazio's built at Boston College, very quietly, they're the sleeper in the ACC. You want to know why? Because they've got a running back in A.J. Dillon. He's rushed for over 1,500 yards last year, has close to 250 yards this year in the first 2 games, and he's been taken out the second half. And how about Anthony Brown, the quarterback's completed 74% of his passes. This is a smash mouth type offense. They're going to run the ball with A.J. Dillon. They're going to pound you into submission. Then they're going to go play action over the top. They're going to score point after point against Wake Forest. This game won't be close. They'll get a couple of touchdowns late for Wake Forest. Oh, by the way, at the end of the game that doesn't count, Boston College wins 44-20.
Well, I think that Boston College is a very good football team, and I think they are a good dark horse in that division. They, you mentioned Brown, you mentioned running back, and their receiver. They're all 3 true sophomores, Mark, so the future looks great for them. I look for Wake Forest to lose this football game, unfortunately 41-28. The starting quarterback projected for Wake Forest was suspended the first 3 games. Who's been a quarterback? A guy by the name of Sam, oh, good Lord knows. He's a true freshman. He's come in. He's done a great job. Hartman. Sam Hartman's his name. I don't believe they can win with a true freshman. This will be the last game. Their quarterback will be suspended. He'll be back for Notre Dame next week. Oh, are we lucky, just in time. But this is a very solid Boston College team.
Well, Coach said it. They got Notre Dame next week. Boston College go to Purdue. But A.J. Dillon and Steve Adazio's offense, they may be running all over Wake Forest. Our 4th game of the Rapid 5, Washington at Utah. 12th meeting between these two. Washington 10-1, going back to 1931. Only the 3rd time they've ever played this game in Utah. And for Utah, if you really look at their schedule, this is the first game for Utah against a team that's probably better than their scout team. So we're going to see how this goes. Mark, talk to us. Washington at Utah.
I'll tell you what, if you look at this game on paper, you think Washington would blow them out, but you have to go back to last year. Washington barely escaped at home, 33-30. Kyle Whittingham always has his team prepared going up against ranked opponents each and every year. Utah's got depth. They're always salty on defense. They'll keep this game close throughout the entire game, but Washington will pull it out in the end because of their quarterback, Jake Browning, running back Myles Gaskins. They'll make plays offensively at the end of this game to pull it out and win. I've got Washington 26-17 over Utah at Utah.
I think, to tell you this, Mark, but I think you're wrong. The game is at Utah, and Utah is always a very, very good defense football team. They're underrated. I think that they don't make an awful lot of mistakes. You mentioned how close the game was before, and I'm not completely sold on this Washington football team. I am sold on Coach Peterson at Washington, but not on the entire football team. I look for Utah to win this football game in a very, very close game, 31-30.
Well, it's going to be a tough one, Jake Browning. Here's the thing. Washington next week got Arizona State. Utah has a bye. Coach, I don't know if there's anything different that people play harder when they've got a bye the following week. Who knows? But that's how that looks. No.
Hey, Kev, you play hard all the time. I don't care who in the world's out on that field. You go out, you play well. Next week, we'll party.
Well, let's see if Utah's going to party or Washington's going to party. Here's what we have, though. Number 5 in the Rapid 5 is, let's call it a tale of 2 quarterbacks, a tale of 2 systems, a tale of 2 schools. We have the Warriors, Hawaii Warriors, from the islands going to West Point to play Army Saturday at noon. And could be a rainy game, too, and that's something to think about. And I say it's a tale of 2 teams, but it's really, let's talk a tale of 2 quarterbacks. Cole McDonald, Hawaii, he leads the nation in passing. He's just throwing it everywhere. Kelvin Hopkins from Army. You know what? He's thrown 28 passes, but that's okay because he's leading a ground attack that averages 400 yards. Cole McDonald, he goes to class sometimes in an outdoor classroom down on the beach. Kelvin Hopkins, he marches to class sometimes. Look at their fan bases. Some have grass skirts and cheer, and the other is the long gray line. So we know all about those things. Let's see how this works out, evens out on the field. Mark, Hawaii at Army. What are your thoughts?
Let me see. Army's quarterback's thrown 28 pass attempts this year. Cole McDonald might have that by halftime. He averages 388 yards a game in the air, and he's got 13 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. But the key to this game, Hawaii's got to go all the way to Army to West Point. That's about 5,000 miles. The game is a 12 o'clock kick for Army. That's like 6 a.m. for boys in Hawaii. It's got to be tough for them to wake up. They won't wake up until the 4th quarter, but they'll pull this game out in the 4th quarter, Coach, 21-18.
Over hill, over dale, as we hit the dusty trail, as the caissons go marching along. I love Army. I love Mitchie Stadium up there. And the fact that Hawaii beat Navy quite decisively, I think 51-42, but the game really wasn't as close as the score would indicate. You have a team that throws the ball exceptionally well, and I agree with you, Mark. It's a good observation about have to come that far, the time of the game, etc. So I think that Army will have to run the football. They have to control the football. What Army has not been very good on this year, Mark, that they normally are. They haven't been good on 3rd down because they come up too many times with 3rd down and 5, 3rd down and 6. That's not the Army's offense. As long as Army can stay unchanged, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, etc. I look for them to control the ball. I think they'll frustrate Hawaii. The Army wins the game 28-24.
8-24. And Coach, as the only Army veteran on this show, I'm sure that's tough for you to make that call. All right, gentlemen, we talked about the upsets. We talked about the wins from last week. We talked about who you think are going to be the winners this coming week. What I want to talk about right now is let's look back and go to our Attaboys. I want to ask Coach and Mark, we talk about what's an Attaboy. You know what? It's just a sign of recognition for someone who's done something pretty good. You know, let's call them out. And that's what we're going to do. So the Crowdline College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May, our Attaboy Awards every week. Mark will pick 2, Coach will pick 2, and then we will send something to those deserving players. So with that, Mark, why don't you lead us off? Who are your 2 Attaboys for week 3 of college football?
Well, my first one is Kellen Mond, the quarterback from Texas A&M, threw for 463 yards and 3 touchdowns, the majority of that in the second half. Kept his team in the football game. Even though they lost the game by 2 points, it showed the nation what Jimbo Fisher can do in a short period of time with a quarterback. He's got a number of quarterbacks that have played in the NFL, first-round draft picks at the quarterback position, even when he was an offensive coordinator before he even got the Florida State job. This is what he can do to develop a quarterback, and Kellen Mond is a star, had a heck of a game, even though they lost. My second Attaboy goes to the entire offensive line for Kentucky. I know everybody's happy about what they've done because they finally beat Florida, but it was the offensive line, the guys that really stood out, that did a terrific job protecting the quarterback, running the ball, and not only running the ball, having a 100-yard rusher. They had not one, but they had 2 100-yard rushers. They just physically pummeled Florida. The offensive line, Attaboy from the University of Kentucky.
Those are 2 very, very good picks, Mark. My first pick is Honor You. Chad Ryland, the kicker for Eastern Michigan. Let's remember this. Eastern Michigan is getting beat, and they're down by 2. And this young man was in high school last year. He comes in and kicked it. Now, let me tell you something, Mark. You don't like kickers, but understand this. The reason most people kick field goals is because you screwed up or else would be kicking an extra point. And the kicker were nothing more than the eraser to erase the mistakes you made, as I said. So, congratulations, Eastern Michigan. Just a great win.
Hey, Coach, wait a minute. Before you get to number 2, the offensive line is on the field for every single play offensively. They don't substitute wide receivers. Oh, yes, they do. They substitute running backs. Oh, yes, they do. They substitute tight ends. Oh, yes, they do. The offensive line, every single snap. The kicker goes on the field for 1.3 seconds, stands out there like this, runs and kicks the ball, and now he's a hero, and everybody wants to pat him on the back. I'm not going for it. I ain't buying it.
Hey, but I've been on that sideline where the guy missed a kick on the last play of the game and we lost. Then you learn to really appreciate him.
Mark, I'm going to make sure 2 things. One, Coach, Chad Ryland will still get his Attaboy, and I'll get his address, and Mark, you can send him a thank you note. All right, Coach, your next Attaboy.
The next one, there were so many great choices, so many great performances, but I've got to give it to Malcolm Perry, the quarterback at Navy. He gained 166 yards, carried the ball 33 times. Navy was down by 12 points in the second half. It looked like there's no way in this world they could beat Memphis. Memphis was picked to win their division in the conference, All-American Conference. Just a great win for Navy. It was in the rain. It was there in Victory Stadium. Have you ever been to Victory Stadium? Beautiful. Double-deck stadium on the bottom of the second tier. They get towards Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, Saipan. One of our players said, boy, what a schedule they play. But a great win for Navy.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we are wrapping up this Week 3 college football show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. So I want to ask you, gentlemen, and Mark, I'm going to start with you. What are you looking forward to most about this upcoming Week 3 of college football?
Well, since I had to lose all my notes after that kicker for Attaboy, Coach, I'm going to go with how Ohio State handles adversity on the road. Because they're going to get hit in the face with a shovel against TCU in Texas. Gary Patterson's going to have a great offensive scheme and a great defensive scheme to go against Ohio State. It's going to be tough early. There's going to be mistakes made by Ohio State early. How they handle adversity on the road. Can they still be that juggernaut that they were at home and put a ton of points on the football scoreboard? We're going to find out this week.
I'm looking to see which team is really going to emerge. Is it going to be Ohio State, TCU? Exactly what's going to happen. I think every game has great interest, particularly if you've been a coach, because you know the thrill and excitement of winning. You know the agony of losing. I'm also hoping the people in North Carolina will protect themselves, as you know. though North Carolina State, West Virginia game was canceled. Last time there was a hurricane in North Carolina was September 1999. I'm at South Carolina. The first game I ever coached in South Carolina, we play NC State in a hurricane. They should have canceled the game. It was unbelievably miserable. So I'm glad that they did make that decision, although that would be a real interesting game. Two teams 2-0. Both teams think they can have a great year.
Well, gentlemen, I think we will get that later. We'll cover that once they postpone that game. But for the Crowds Line College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May, first we'd like to, send our prayers out to those in the way of this Hurricane Florence coming on. Godspeed, be safe, evacuate if you can. But we are thinking about you. But I want to bring something up to you, gentlemen, and maybe to you, the people watching this show. What I'm looking forward to most about Week 3 of college football is that we're going to have Week 3 of college football. Some of you remember 17 years ago, on Tuesday, September 11th, some things changed in the world. And a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people, came up and said, hey, you know what? Why did this happen? How did this happen? What are we going to do about this? And for the last 17 years, you've seen how it's shaped a country. It's shaped families. It's shaped individuals. And so what I would ask you is to think about that this Saturday. That 17 years ago, we didn't really have a Week 3 college football season. Why? Because we said, no, we're not going to do that right now. But there are men and women standing opposed around the globe that have been doing so for the last 17 years. And one of the things that I'm thankful that they're doing that, and I hope all of you are too, is that we have this college football season. Because good, bad, ugly, the one thing about this country that we can all agree on, the ultimate uniter, and we have to keep it this way, probably the ultimate uniter that we have in this country is college football. And with that, I look forward to Week 3 of college football. Coach, Mark, it's been a pleasure. I will talk to you this week. I can't wait. God bless. Thank you.
From the 30, Johnson out of the shotgun. Dropping back, pressure on, throwing over the middle. Has Williams. 10, 5, touchdown!